Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Beyond Stats podcast. On this episode, we have with us Jackson Thiebes, a professional rugby player for the New England Free Jacks of Major League Rugby. Jackson has quite the journey. He's originally from Montana and decided to play D3 football at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. He went on to transfer to the University of Montana, a D1 school, where he eventually started for the Grizz on the O-line. After going all-conference and graduating from Montana, he trained for an NFL tryout. He then went on to transfer to Endicott College in Massachusetts for a post-grad degree to receive his MBA and play rugby. From there, he went on to receive several accolades, like NSCRO All-American, and eventually signed with Mystic River Rugby Club, and then professionally with the Free Jacks. Stay tuned as Jackson shares his thoughts on his journey to pro rugby, what it was like transitioning from football to rugby, and what it's like as a pro athlete using sports tech. Now let's go beyond the stats. So Jackson, great to have you on. We're just going to jump right into it. Want to hear more from you about your recruiting process. Originally, you played football, right? Want to hear kind of more about your story from D3 to D1 and so forth. So if you could please share.
Yeah. So there's no Division III schools in Montana. So I actually had to reach out to schools in Washington and Oregon coming out of high school because they don't have the means to recruit that far. So I reached out to a few schools, Lewis and Clark College, Willamette, Puget Sound University, and eventually I landed with Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. I played there for my first semester freshman year. I played D-line and tight end, actually. And then after that first season, I wanted to transfer back to University of Montana, or transfer to University of Montana and try out for the football team there. They have what is called a winter conditioning tryout. So it's open to the public. It's open to the school. You take it. It's actually a class. You get a credit. And it's Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 a.m. outside of Montana in February. So it's about 3 inches of snow and 5 degrees. But basically it was Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour and a half. They ran you as hard as they could with the team. And then at the end of that, after I think it was 12 weeks of it, you would either get invited to spring ball or not. So my freshman year, I did that. And I didn't get invited to spring ball. So then I was going to be done with sports, actually played a little bit of rugby that spring semester. And then over the summer, I kind of reevaluated what I wanted to do, and I started training again. And then that next coming winter, I did the class again. And that time I got invited to spring ball. They recruited me as a tight end. And then shortly after, I was moved to O-line. And then I was at UM O-lineman from then on.
Oh, wow. So I actually want to take step back there. So you mentioned football. Like, obviously you play for the New England Free Jacks now, you play rugby, but want to hear a little bit more about your mindset kind of going from high school to college. Did you know football was going to be the choice?
Throughout high school, I wasn't really that interested in pursuing sports past high school. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being with my friends. Football is fun, track and field's fun, sitting out in the sun, hanging out. But I was just ready to go to school. I was actually looking to go to Montana State. I don't even want to say that because I can't stand them. But no, out of high school, it wasn't until after my senior year of football, when I got done, I realized that maybe I could try to pursue this and work hard and see what could happen. And so I eventually, like I said, went to Lewis and Clark College, and I kept developing, kept growing, got bigger, got taller. And then from then, I just realized that, Division III wasn't quite enough for me in the sense of football. So I really wanted to try to shoot for something bigger, and playing for the University of Montana as a kid in Montana is like a dream come true. So.
Yeah. Did you start right away at Lewis and Clark?
I didn't start. I played quite a bit. They weren't used to having someone, 6'4", 6'5", in a Division III school is pretty rare because you can't really, teach or train height. So I played quite a bit, and I think they saw the potential in me, so they really wanted me to stay. So it was, hard decision to leave. I made a lot of great friends, but ultimately it paid off.
Yeah, definitely. Because same journey for me. My freshman year, I went to Pine Manor and transitioned there to Endicott. And some people think it's a risky move because you're transitioning, you're going to a new campus, that's a new set of friends. But sometimes you kind of just have to make those moves. It worked out for me, and it sounds like it worked out for you. So it was like one of those risky moves that ended up paying off. But that's good to hear, man. It's interesting to kind of hear.
Now, you mentioned you were 6'4" at the time. How tall are you now?
6'6".
6'6". So a little bit more about high school. How tall were you then? And it seems like you kind of sprung up in college and then realized, hey, I outgrew D3. So I want to hear a little bit more about your mindset. When was really like the you realized like, hey, I could take this up a notch, or did it keep going from each level?
It kept growing. I remember in high school, I really was like, man, I could play Division III football. I really want to do this. I started, weight training before my end of my senior year. I didn't even lift weights. I weighed 200 pounds and played tackle, and as a skinny, fat, white kid. And so I started training, and then at Lewis and Clark, I kept developing and things like that. And I thought, maybe I could take this to the next level. And so I, went and tried out, didn't make it. And then I think probably that summer going into my sophomore year is when I really decided I gotta, try something I've never done before and give it really everything I got. And then, that worked out. I eventually made the team. And then I think the next time I stepped that level up is when I decided to try out for NFL and did the UM Pro Day. And so that's when I went so that's when I moved to Southern California, actually with my parents. There's a training facility there in Palm Springs, California. So I trained there for a few months, made some connections with some older offensive linemen who train O-linemen now who are preparing for the draft. And then I went to Atlanta and stayed there for a month and trained with a few people. And that's when I eventually would try out for the pros after that.
Damn, so sports really taking you all over. So let's kind of focus a little bit more on that NFL tryout, because I want to hear more about that experience. Did you kind of have your mind set already that, hey, no matter what, I was going to go to the league, or same thing? Did you have a game or a standout performance where you're like, hey, I could actually give this a go?
Well, it's kind of similar to high school, is where I was playing. I actually started my first game that fall after I made the team in the spring. The tackle in front of me became academically ineligible, and then I all of a sudden was thrusted in the starting spot. And actually, my first game was against the University of Wyoming, and I played against a D-end who would eventually go to the pros. So I was kind of in and out of starting positions. I got hurt my junior year, high ankle sprain. So I was kind of fighting. I was kind of like the sixth man coming off the bench sort of for the O-line. I played tackle, guard, and center. But then my senior year is when I had really my breakout year. I gained, a good amount of weight. I got up to 300. And then, I was all conference my senior year, and a lot of guys on the team were like, hey, you really should, my coach approached me as well. He's like, hey, you really should look to maybe do pro day and try out for the pros, or maybe Canadian football. And, I sat down and thought about it and talked to my parents and my girlfriend as well. And came to the decision that I should definitely give it a shot.
Yeah, it seems like, at least for you, you had that encouragement and that extra push to. So, kind of diving in more to that NFL tryout, and what was it like afterwards from that? What's the biggest thing you took from that?
It didn't go as well as I wanted. My numbers, my 40, the bench press, all those things. It wasn't great. Obviously I didn't stand out because or else I'd be, hopefully playing in the pros. But, afterwards I had a lot of kind of sadness and self-doubt and wondered why I was even doing it, because, I didn't get a call. I didn't get a call for even a tryout or anything. And that's all I really wanted was a tryout. I never expected to get drafted or anything like that. I just thought, get me on the field and we'll see. But, that opportunity never came. And, at first I was pretty mad and disappointed, but in the end, I just realized that, I tried, and I'll never have to wonder, if it ever could have been. So.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice right now. Obviously with the NFL draft that just happened, that's only a certain amount of athletes, but you have all those athletes like yourself who kind of transition to that next phase of undrafted free agent or getting a tryout for a team. But that give that D3 athlete, that D2 athlete, or that underrated D1 athlete that little bit of confidence or advice to just go for it, because either way, you never know where you may end up or what you may get.
Well, that's exactly how I ended up with Endicott. Is our coach Dave Kinkle, he put me in contact with that old offensive lineman trainer. And once all that played out, he reached out to me again, Dave did, and then was like, hey, you should come to Endicott College and, pursue your MBA in rugby.
That's we need to break that down. I feel like that's great. That's such an unexpected turn. Like,
oh yeah, I know.
Like, kind of break that down. What was that like going through that? That's an awesome story.
Did you play rugby before you got that call? Were you already experienced?
So yeah, how I knew Dave was he was our high school rugby coach. He kind of started the rugby in the Flathead Valley, Kalispell, where we're all from, Nick and Ori and all of us. So he kind of started it, and he really helped grow the whole sport in Montana. So I played for him in high school, and I remember he told me too in high school, he's like, man, you should pursue rugby in college. And I was like, no, I want to play football. Like, I'm starting to like football again, and I'm starting to get better and stuff. So once I was done, he texted me every once in a while and would call me, or I'd see him when I would be back up in Kalispell, and he'd always ask me how football's going at UM and all that stuff. But yeah, and then once I was done, I told him I was going to try it for the pros, and he was like, well, let me see what I can do. And he gave me a lot of great connections and a lot of help. So yeah, once I did the whole NFL draft thing and the pro day, he reached back out to me, and there we go.
Yeah. And it just shows you like the connections in sports. That's another lesson in itself. But
yeah,
he helped you with the trial. He's willing to help you transition into rugby. I want to hear a little bit more about that, because like for me, I was someone in myself. I was a former football player too. After I was pretty hands off and was like against playing rugby, but fell in love with the sport pretty quickly once I tried. So I think this would be just a good selling point, good story for football players that may be out there considering. So tell us more what happens when you get to Endicott.
Yeah, I mean, so I got to Endicott, the January of 2018. Noel and I got in the Honda and got a U-Haul trailer and our truck and drove all the way across the country. And we got there knowing one person. I knew Nick and I knew Coach Kinkle. And so that transition from football to rugby for me wasn't too hard because I had some experience. Like I said, in high school, I played a little bit. I didn't really remember much. That was 6 years later, but I played a little bit in college. Like I said, before I made the Grizzlies. So I had a little bit of basis, and before I moved out, I brushed up on it a little bit. But, rugby and football, the rules obviously are very, very different. But a lot of the tools and the skills that you have or that you need to have are very compatible between like tackling, physicality, using your body level, I guess, against other people. There's a lot of things, passing, all communication, all those things that you use in football, you use a lot in rugby as well. So there's a lot of those tools that I had that I brought over from football. So it wasn't I was starting from the ground level.
Okay, cool. And more importantly, to the camaraderie aspect, I think for me, the biggest thing I learned from kind of rugby too is just how inviting and how much of a aggressive game, but also a gentleman's game. Just how it stretches. Anytime I bring up I play rugby, and you find out someone else did too. There's just a different level of connection there.
Yeah, I mean, there's all those sayings. Rugby is the world's largest fraternity. It's a hooligan sport played by gentlemen. There's all these things. The people talk about rugby, but I think one thing with football players in rugby is football is one of the few sports that once you're done with high school or college, or for 99% of the people, it's when they're done with their high school career, they'll never really get to play football again. There's no intramural football teams. There's no men's team in your town. There's soccer and there's tennis and golf and all these things. But rugby is a sport that you can play until you can't hardly run. But it's a rugby tournament. There's usually one old guy game going on, and there's like 50-year-olds out there.
Hey, our coach used to practice with us some games
absolutely
just to get in shape. So
yeah. So it's a sport that if you love to hit and run and tackle and be a part of a team, a physical sport, you can play rugby for as long as you're healthy.
Interesting. Any football players out there listening that come to a crossroad with football? Rugby seems like a pretty good option. So let's break down, like, how did you go from Endicott? How many years did you play rugby at Endicott?
1 year. It was the 1 year NBA program that I was in. So I got in 2 seasons with them.
And then that was enough to, I guess, get you some looks. How did you hear about Jacks? How did they get eyes on you? Can you kind of break down? Because I feel like that's crazy in itself.
Yeah. So Dave Kinkle, he put me in contact with Josh Smith, who was the coach at the time of the Mystic River Rugby Club, which was the top level. It's called D1, not to be confused with like D1 NCAA. They just call it D1 rugby in the United States. It's the highest level of club men's rugby. And so he was the Mystic River Boston Club coach. And I was playing with Endicott in the fall, and then I was also playing with them. I was doing double duty. I would go a few Saturdays, I would play with Endicott, and then later that day go play with Mystic. I was playing with them, and then when the Free Jacks were starting to get more legitimate, and they had their CEO and it was an official team, they asked Josh Smith to be the coach. So he brought over a lot of those Mystic player guys for that first inaugural season. It wasn't an actual Major League Rugby season. It was kind of just like a practice season. And so I was playing with them. We went up to Halifax and played Toronto. We played Rugby United New York. We played the Salt Lake, Utah Warriors. So we had a lot of like exhibition matches. And then from there, that next season is with this current season, or would have been the current season. They took a handful of the guys from that team and brought them over, and then they filled the rest with foreigners. But yeah, that's eventually how I would get with the Free Jacks, was through Mystic River.
That's crazy. That's a wild turn, and then you ran with it, right? Because like at that point, you decided this is my new path, this is my new future, and you kind of been there since. How many years is that since that point, or how long has it been since then?
Yeah, I think, probably a year and a half. I think right when we started that exhibition season, and I kind of realized that rugby was something that I was good at, and I enjoyed working hard and learning and getting in good
Pretty
shape.
Damn good. You know how hard it is to tackle you in practice? I mean, everyone knows we should do a side-by-side comparison, but I'm 5'5", 5'6". Coach lines me up against him first practice.
You chop me down. It's all right. Well, that's the thing with rugby too. There's no pads or anything. So if you're a good I've been tackled by guys smaller, way smaller than me. And I've been trucked by small guys. It's different than football. It's size matters obviously, but it doesn't matter as much as people think.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the things I love, just playing alongside you and just having that here, it's just like you met your size, like obviously you're a gentle giant off the field and, pretty lax, but when you got on the field, I don't know what happens, but you take off those glasses and it's like another Jackson you unleash, and it matches, your strength and your aggression. So I just love that teammate. Like I said, I got to try and take you in practice, but I love that, being alongside you on the outside and you're taking 2-3 guys, dragging them with you. And I'm like, yo, pitch it. And you just, you always turn it into a try or something bigger. So,
yeah. Well, a lot of that I credit to football is something that I would say football definitely taught me, especially at the University of Montana. I was fortunate enough to have a really, really good offensive line coach. And I should have wore the shirt, but you might have seen me wear the DOLA shirt, Mark, dominant offensive lineman attitude.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a mindset that, he sat us down before we started fall camp, and he gave us about a 10-minute lecture where he was, the most intense and focused I've ever seen him describe and make sure that we understood what DOLA meant as an offensive line. If, you ever talk with O-linemen, it's really a brotherhood in the family, because there's not a whole lot of positions where you have 5 guys all working together, in the same room or on the field together. So, I learned that, and he ingrained that into us every single day. That's where I learned all my mental toughness off the field, on the field, in the weight room, everything, in the classroom, wherever. It was dominant offensive lineman attitude, and that can really be applied to anything. And so that's something I brought over to rugby with me. And I think that's why I, succeeded so much, was my mindset.
Starts with the mindset, and it then translates onto the field. So want to hear more about, you kind of talked about the mindset and how that was instilled, and you talk to us about your training regimen, how it progressed over the years and how it may have changed. You became a pro, right?
Yeah. So just kind of briefly at UM, for most D1 athletes, it's weightlifting in the morning, class until 2, film in between classes, and then from basically 2 to 7-ish is film, practice, breakdown, things like that. But training with the pros has been, it's been different because we're still a startup. Major League Rugby is. It's not like NFL where you're staying on this campus all day and they have food and all these things for you and trainers. So we were fortunate enough actually to have a really great facility called Flight Strength and Performance. It's in Newton, Mass. And then we actually were lucky enough to lease the office across the hall from it, and they renovated it and they put turf in and all this stuff and film rooms. So we were able to actually stay in one building for a good chunk of the day to get a lot of our film and training in. But yeah, we lifted 4 times a week, conditioned after practice, before practice, a lot. And, in the professional level, you're expected to either condition yourself or be conditioned. And most of the time people will just show up already in good enough conditioning. So, but a lot of the guys, including myself, we would always do extra stuff before or after practice.
I think that's a great point you brought up, because that comes with trust and, knowing that, hey, athletes are going to show up. I feel like we could get into the track, and we'll save that a little bit more for later, but kind of want to look a little bit more on how that differed from football in terms of, training and what you were used to maybe at, you mentioned in Oregon or at the University of Montana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of similarities, just the team lifts and team conditioning and things like that. But the difference between like an offensive lineman and a rugby player is pretty significant in what we do in terms of like conditioning and training. A lot of the same like compound lifts, bench, squat, clean, a lot of dumbbell work. Rugby though, there's a lot of kind of like body control work, understanding like how your hips move and how to get low. Things like that. But then the main thing really is the conditioning, the actual like sprints. I mean, Mark can tell you, Coach Kinkle ran us a lot. And, yeah. Oh yeah, it's different.
First time I had asthma attack.
I remember.
Yeah, that was not fun. That was like my first couple practices back from being out too.
I remember. Like an offensive lineman obviously doesn't have to be in very good shape besides like those 3 to 5 second bursts, as they're blocking each play, compared to like maybe a corner or receiver or running back, who could actually do some decent sprints. But, rugby players, they expect the littlest guy and the biggest guy to be able to run for 80 minutes straight. And so you really have to condition like that. So we did a lot of pretty long, long, hard conditioning, I guess.
Yeah. I think we're gonna get into like some of the tech that you might be using, because we are tech focused, and we're lucky to have someone like you on that. It seems like you guys are using tech over at the Free Jacks. Can you break down what you're using, and then we'll talk about like what you've felt has had the most impact, or what you find to be most like impactful in your training?
Yeah, so we would use those Catapult GPS trackers that go onto your back. Those are amazing. They really gave us a lot of information. They talked about, the total distance, meters per second, heart rate, your max speed for the day compared to your overall max speed. It tracked collisions. What else? I have it here. Just like high speed sprints, minutes of rugby, and all these things. And we would take that data, and then we also had a questionnaire that we had to fill out each day with our like soreness level, body weight, how much we slept, what we eat, and all these things. And they put it all into all these graphs, and we check it out every single day. And it's good. You can tell when you've had a good practice or a good game, but it's also nice to kind of see the data behind it and understanding like, all right, well, my hours of sleep have been down and my body weight's been down, and I guess it's no coincidence that my total meters for that practice was also down. So it's good to be able to actually visualize and see the data,
the
and
full
understand
correlation. Wow, damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what was I going to ask just on top of that? I wanted to just make the point that, if anyone is looking at professional rugby or something, like this is something that they should start getting used to. And what something Inform Stats as a company, we want to start getting younger athletes used to this, tracking your sleep, tracking your distance per match. Because you can tell, like, a player like here we have with Jackson, like, that's the norm for you guys, like that's in and out. You're going to know what your numbers are. Whereas, so I feel like this is a perfect case in point for anyone out there that wants to take it to that next level. The sooner you start tracking this kind of stuff, the better, and the faster you get used to it. So when you get to that level, it's already like second nature. So it's just it really interesting to see how that, like, you guys are definitely using that every day. So that's
absolutely. I mean, all this data and all these figures, it's just more knowledge, and knowledge is power. And, understanding and visualizing what you're going through and what you're putting your body through will only help you and make you a better athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about your transition, the mentality first and how it goes into the training regimen, and now your experience at the Free Jacks and having access to tech. What is some advice you would give, to your younger self, a younger Jackson along this journey, or, an athlete similar that in your shoes, and just consider what's out there, consider training, and, even
definitely
transitioning to different sport?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd have a few things. Some of them, might be a little cliche, but for me, it was finding something that I wanted, finding a goal, whatever that was, and figuring out the things that helped me get there and didn't help me get there, and apply those. It's, if you need to work out and get stronger or get faster or whatever that is, start reaching out, talk to coaches, talk to old players, talk to, anybody, find help, make connections, get a strategy, get a game plan, and just go after it. Don't listen to anybody. If you fail, keep going. If it's important enough to you, then keep going. If I would have given up after that time, the first time I didn't make the football team, I don't know where I'd be. I know I wouldn't be playing rugby right now. So
you wouldn't be here. Yeah, that's great.
So if you want to play football, if you want to play rugby, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be sports. Just ask for help, ask for advice, and go after it.
Yeah, great advice, and even better guy. I mean, I could see how you saying that even translates to your play on the field. So, kind of last question. We're in obviously some unforeseen circumstances, unprecedented times. What are you doing as a, professional athlete during this time, during this pandemic? And give us an update as to what was happening before and what's the plans for afterwards.
Yeah, so right now I'm in Warden, Montana, which is a town of about 1,000. So my training regimen right now is pretty limited. We've been doing like sprints on the football field, stadium stairs. I'm lucky enough to actually have a bench and dumbbells 10 to 90. So I can really do a pretty decent workout right now as well. So, my training isn't perfect, but right now it's kind of, like you said, unprecedented time. So, just trying to do whatever you can every day to get out and take a hike or, do whatever. And then after, it's hard to say, whenever all this stuff gets figured out and all the bans kind of get lifted, I'll definitely start getting back into the actual gym and training some more. It's hard right now also to maintain your weight. You think it'd be easy just sitting on the couch to gain weight, but if you're a big guy who normally isn't big, you have to eat, 4 meals a day, which is hard when you're not practicing for 3 hours a day and then also weightlifting for an hour and a half. So that's been a challenge.
You were in season, right? You were in.
Oh yeah, we were in the middle of the season. We just got home from New Orleans. I actually wasn't on that trip. I was hurt that week. So we got home, and I think that Tuesday they brought us in and said that, we're done for 30 days. And then I think the next week they were like, yeah, we're done for good for the season.
Wow. So what was your thoughts? Like, what were your first kind of thoughts and feelings, in the middle of the season and just hearing like that, like, hey, this is kind of have to be put on hold. What were your initial thoughts?
I mean, at first I was angry, upset, really disappointed. I let myself feel sorry for about 24 hours or 48 hours. And then I just realized, it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is figure out what the next step is. And for me, that was, getting home, getting Noelle and myself home safely. And then, right now we're just doing everything that we can to stay, in shape as best as I can, weightlifting, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it was disappointing. It feels like a huge part of me got ripped out, but all you can do is figure out what the next step is. So
yeah, keep moving forward. That's great advice to you young athletes. Well, Jackson, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the Beyond Stats podcast. My name is Mark, alongside my co-host Diego. We have Jackson Thiebes with us from the New England Free Jacks. Thanks for joining.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.